بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back everybody to Connections episode 3. We are back with Sheikh Idris, alhamdulillah. And today's topic is on the benefit of the somatic approach. If you've been with us for the previous 2 talks, we've been talking about trauma and embodiment and being present and the felt sense and all of that. And so today we wanted to kind of focus a little bit more on what it means to do somatic work and to have a somatic approach to therapy and a little bit about how that works. So I think maybe it'd be useful just to frame it a little bit for the Muslims, inshallah ta'ala. You know, as a human being, we have 3 parts, right? We have 3 basic parts. We have the ruh, which is the spirit. We have the nafs, which is the local consciousness, the mind, the soul. And then we have the body, the jism. And these 3 components make up who we are. And, you know, these are 3 different levels of being, 3 different kind of zones of who we are, 3 different zones of self. And in that integration of those 3, we have a human being. Oftentimes what we find in certain types of medicine, certain types of mental health interventions, for example, and I'm not here denigrating anything, but we're trying to understand the place of everything, because in a holistic model, things have their place. And so, you know, in conventional systems of healing, we have this thing called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a wonderful tool to help somebody understand themselves from the place of the mind. But unfortunately, we are not just a mind. Maybe actually, well, fortunately, we are not just a mind, but unfortunately for the CBT people, because in some way there is a blind spot or multiple blind spots actually that emerge when we focus on just the mental apparatus, the mental kind of functions of the human being, and not include the other really important elements, which are, for example, the jism, the body, and all of its different features and all of its different levels, and even the consciousness of the body. The body has a consciousness, has an awareness. And so in the somatic approach, what we try to do is bring in the element, the dimension of the body, where we can begin to apprehend and appreciate other levels of experience beyond just our narrative mind, our semantic mind, the mind that uses words and maybe images. That's very useful, and that's very obviously real for us. But also, perhaps even more real is the felt sense in the body of what's going on. You know, when you're anxious, it's not just this mental knowledge of, oh, I'm anxious. I know this because I've seen a movie before where the person was worried about something in the future and they said, I'm anxious, so I guess this is anxiety. No, you have this tension, you have this heart maybe, heart rate increase, you're maybe sweating a little bit, maybe you're getting clammy, you know, maybe you're getting a little bit contracted in your posture, your vision begins to maybe zone in a little bit, right? You begin to think very quickly, whatever, there's all these different features. And there's a felt sense of what it means to be anxious. In that example, you know, we get a sense of the importance of the somatic work, because that whole dimension of our experience speaks volumes about what's going on, and it paves a way for the way forward, meaning how to find balance, how to find healing, how to find, inshallah ta'ala, a way back into, like we talked about last episode, to ourselves, back to our agency, back to our senses of who we are in real time. So I know Sheikh Idris, he is a somatic experiencing therapist. He's also training in NARM. And he's a big advocate of somatic approach, the somatic approach. And so how do you see the, Assalamu alaikum, welcome back.
Yes, so
How do you see the somatic approach from either a Islamic or a clinical perspective, and how does it inform your work, inshallah ta'ala?
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. So when we're looking at somatic work, it's part of the piece, like you were saying, body, mind, and spirit, and it's an essential element that is part of one of our primary senses of being, which is our body, and it's really important that it be included in the picture. And so when we're dealing with any sort of struggle that we're in our life, we want to be able to explore it on many levels. And we have to include all the different levels so we can get a more holistic solution to that problem. Mm-hmm. And often we try to think our way out of situations. That's the struggle we have, like you were mentioning. And we bypass other elements of ourself. Like we were speaking in the last conversation, we were speaking about we almost want to skip stages in our stages of development. But we're always having to refer back to our very early stages, which is ultimately rooted in the body, because the first stage is the sensory motory. Like when we're born as a child, we are working through how our body functions. We're not working with the cognitive. We're not even working. We're not working fully with the emotional elements as such at that point. It's much more in the very primary stages, in the womb and the first months. We're working with like the focus is on these movements and getting to grips with the body. And Islam recognizes that, in that the way we approach our religion is first Islam, which is the physical, the outward. So like when we want to have a relationship with Allah, we recognize our body has to engage with God. And we don't say, well, I'm not going to start doing physical stuff until I really work these things out. No, all these things have to be in play with one another. And the way I express this to clients often to help them understand is, you know, when you were a baby in the womb of your mother, you didn't have thoughts. You weren't thinking. And some people have to really think about that. You know, they say, really? You know, you weren't sitting in the womb thinking, oh, I wonder when my next meal's coming, or I wonder what's going on outside. That part of you's not there yet. Yeah. And then I ask a tougher question. I say, what about emotions? Were they there? And that's a tougher one. I mean, even for myself, when I say, my sort of conclusion is the primary emotions are very, like, you know, rage or bliss. There's an element of that there, but it's still very primitive. We're not working with emotions until we're, you know, into the, you know, emotional regulation, where parents are teaching the child, you know, how to manage his emotions. That's more in the ages of 2, 3, 4, and 5. But we definitely, my next question is, were we experiencing sensations, heat, coolness, tension, weight, lightness, flow, stillness? We're experiencing those. And you know, people say, yeah, every organism experiences those. So that's the primary way that you experienced yourself. It's the fundamental first stage of how you experience yourself. And if there was any sort of interruption or rupture in that, then we have to go back to that. And also we have to include it no matter what. It's got to be included in when we're exploring our sense of self, because it was the primary way, the interface between us and the world, us and ourselves. And so then then we explore the emotions after that. Then we explore the thoughts. You know, that as it's different for each person, but we definitely want to include it. And some people find that easier than others, because we live in such a cerebral society. that it's often very difficult for people to go to that. So we meet them where they're at, but ultimately we want them to be able to ask the questions, what's that like for you when when you talk about that? What's the experience of that? I see that you seem, a lot of color comes into your face. Are you aware of the color in your face? Can you feel it? So you're inviting them. And if it's they don't notice it, they don't notice it, but you're bringing that into the conscious awareness, that second stage of learning, the unconscious incompetence is, oh yeah, I think this is something I need to work on. It's missing. And we know that most of the neural sort of communication in the body is 80% up, 20% down. So the CBT approach, the idea is that if I change my thoughts, it will have an effect on my physiology, which is true to some extent, but it's very limited because it's 20% down and you're trying to influence this 80% up. There's a strong pull from below. So we really want to engage that because we're far more likely to find change. And then the way I express this to people is, if I have a belief about myself, I'm unlovable, then that's a belief that has thoughts. So here's the sentence, I'm unlovable. So that's the belief and that's the thoughts about yourself. And that's a whole sentence, isn't it? I'm unlovable. And I say, yes. So that's your thoughts. Your emotions are the individual words. That's an emotion there. Am, there's an emotion to that. Unlovable, there's an emotional reaction to that. So the words are like the emotions. The sentences like the thoughts and the beliefs. And the sensations are like the letters. And in order for us to change that belief of I'm unlovable, we need to reorganize the actual letters so that we make new words and so we can make new sentences. And so it has as a general ruling, a far more profound impact on our ability to bring about change if we include the body in there. And I love Lawrence Heller's analogy. It's one of my favorite analogies. I always bring it up. He mentions is that our bodies have been neglected, and our bodies are like that little kitten that when you go out and you open your door and you see this abused, beaten up little kitten in the dark night, and it looks you in the eye and you look it in the eye, and you both know it'd be better for that little kitten to come in and you to take care of it, but it's not ready. Like if you grab that kitten at that moment and say, come in here, you're not respecting it. You're not giving it the agency, as we spoke before, to make that choice to come in. And so if I grab that kitten, it's going to scratch me to bits, isn't it? And so how are you going to lure that little kitten in? And your body is like the kitten. It's like, how am I going to lure that kitten in so it feels safe? It's got to feel that I trust you, not on a cerebral level. Of course I trust myself. No, on a felt sense that it does. So maybe I say, what would you do? Maybe I might put a saucer of milk and then I go out. I leave the cat and give it space. So it comes up and it sips the milk and then it sees me and it runs away, and I let it, that's okay, you can run away. But I'm still here till I feel my presence. And then you might like open the door a bit more ajar so it can come in. And I really find it useful for clients to see their bodies like an animal that you're looking after, because you would never, I've got a cat and it's paranoid and terrified of it's terrified of my Hoover. And I used to, like, every time I get the Hoover out, it just go wild and run. And I used to just like try to do exposure therapy to my cat. I'd bring the Hoover up to it and say, come on. And that did not work. Cat, it petrified the cat even more. So what I would do is I would bring the Hoover out and I'd say, Hibba, Hoover. And it would and I'll give her the allowance to sort of recognize it's here. So I'm not going to turn it on yet. It's here and it's upstairs and you're downstairs. And I just want you to know it's there. And then I would say, then I bring it down closer to her. And then she'd run away. But I practiced this and it took me about a year. And now she's okay at being out because I gradually got her accustomed to it and respected her boundaries. So I let her run out. I open the door for her if she wants to run out. To a point now where I can bring the Hoover right next to her, but we still haven't got to a point where I can turn it on and she'd be in the same room. That's not happening yet. But the fact that I've like listened to the cat and respected it, it comes to a point where that cat will come in and it's ready to play game, because it shows that you're respecting it and you're honoring its boundaries.
That's beautiful.
And we have to do that with our bodies.
Eventually they'll start writing it.
Yeah.
That'll be maybe in 6 months. We'll check in with the cat Hibba and see how she's doing.
And we have to do that with ourselves. We have to, like a simple exercise you can do for this. I rest, but some of you may be familiar with the Wim Hof method. And the Wim Hof method is where one of his things is exposing yourself to cold to build resiliency. Mm-hmm. So he'd get you to jump in like lakes, cold lakes, and all this sort of stuff. Now, it's interesting. I had a client come to me, and he was really into all this stuff. And he says, you know what? I jump into the shower and I expose myself. I just turn on the cold water and it hits my body, and I go into these shutdown states. And I said, yeah, that's called the dorsal vagal shutdown. Like, he basically become completely disorientated. He didn't know why it was. This is a guy that's pretty strong, but you could see that there were some emotional issues he was working through. Mm-hmm. And that was a real eye-opener for me. So I said to him, okay, try this. And I'm going to do this with you as well. We're going to go into a hot shower. How's that feel? Oh, that feels lovely. I love my hot power shower. So it's beating. Now, does your body feel relaxed with that? Yeah, it does. It does. Now, I want you to reduce the temperature. But as you get to a temperature where your body starts to almost constrict a bit, you can feel it, almost the onset of a little constriction. I want you to stop that temperature and be with that temperature. Nice. And honor that. Okay, I did that. And there will come a point where your body says, okay, I'm okay with this. And then then I say, then you reduce it. After you've done that for about 30 seconds, a minute, your body's relaxed and it's okay. Then reduce it. And you keep reducing at a level where you're listening to the body. And you'll eventually get to a point where that freezing cold water, you will get a point where your body goes, oh, because it's moving into regulating with the shift in the temperature. But then you'll start to feel the warmth internally, even though it's cold. But you did it gradually at a level where you were respecting your body. So that's the exercise for today. Nice. is that go into the shower and practice respecting your body. And if your body is not ready for that freezing cold temperature, don't do it. Just do it until basically and you'll tell by the tension of your body, or almost say, I'm open to this, I'm not open to this. And honoring the bodies. And then what we find is, as you learn to do that, you build resiliency, because you have to the opposite extremes, hot, heat, cold. And we want to in life to be able to move between these two, comfort, discomfort, but we want to do it in a way that our bodies feel comfortable with that. That's not always possible because life throws things at us, but ideally we want to move what I call comfort, challenge, and then we can move between these two polarities in a fluid way. And that's what resiliency is, where you can cope with these challenges of life. And that's a very simple physiological exercise to practice that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. So really, in summary then, what we find is that the somatic approach is a bottoms-up approach. If we were to have it kind of vertically oriented, the mind being on top and the bottom, we're working with the body to help regulate the body at the level of sensation, not from the mind. We have to come down to it and regulate it from there, and then we can begin to move that regulation up.
Yeah.
Really, ideally, we have systems, or have at least awareness, a consciousness in the therapist, of both the top down and the bottom, which is where you can hold the physical and the somatic and the semantic and the emotional and the relational, and the relationship that the client has with the patient themselves, and that transference, countertransference. That's really good therapy when someone can do that. That's really powerful stuff. It's very process oriented, very respectful, and very individualized and tailored for the person, because there's no one size fits all, whether in medicine, whether in counseling or anything, spirituality, parenting, education for young children. There's no one size fits all. And so allowing for that is beautiful. And starting with the body, and then moving through the stages up into the other higher forms of consciousness is the way to go, inshallah.
Yeah, that's the ideal, but obviously we have, as you were just saying, we have to meet people where they're at. And clients sometimes cognitive processing is their safe place, and we're not trying to force people in their bodies. Just like You know, with the cat, we've got to respect where it's at.
Exactly.
And noticing, I can see this person every time I invite them into their body, they're not willing to go there. They're immediately wanting to go back to why though? Why?
Yeah.
And you know, and we have to respect that this is a person protecting themselves ultimately.
Exactly.
But
Very good.
every so often inviting them, I notice, as you say, that you feel a bit calmer as I've explained that to you. You know, are you, you know, I don't know what's that. Well, how is that for you? Does that, you aware of that? No, okay, no problem. And saying, I'm not there yet, but we know where we'd like to be ultimately to integrate all of these levels, like you were saying.
Beautiful. Yeah, awesome. Beautiful. Thank you so much. So I'm going to offer one more exercise because I really like this.
Yeah.
One. The Qigong exercise. And basically it's slapping. Very gentle. You don't have to sit there and whack yourself, but just really waking up the nervous system. Nervous system is a web of information, of energy flow that flows through the entire body. And so just starting in the morning, I do mine in the morning generally, and just spend 5 minutes tapping everything and going down through the legs, the inner thighs, the calves, even the head. I mean, this one feels really good. I just sit there and kind of, because it brings the blood flow, it awakens the nerves, it awakens the body. And part of, you know, chronic fragmentation, chronic dissociation, the body goes cold, like your friend did in the shower. I mean, that's a chronic state. The dorsal vagal response is a shutdown immobility response. It's almost a type of paralysis. And so by waking things up, you know, with touch, with attention, really what this is I see you, here you are, here I am, wake up, wake up, wake up, here we are. And it's a reminder for the body, and the body will respond. Inshallah ta'ala. If you're gentle and you know you don't go too hard and don't go too much, but you'll find that in time you don't have to have your morning coffee anymore. You're just like, I'm up. Do some breath work, do that gradual contrast shower of hot and then gradual cold, and then start your day. You'll find yourself way more embodied. And this is a place you want to be. You don't want to be up here in your life. This is not a place to be. This is a place to plan, to think about logically, to strategize, to organize. But then the locus of life is in the body, in the jism, in the heart. Inna fil jasadi mudgha. Verily in the body there is a morsel of flesh. If it is sound, the whole body is sound. If it is corrupt, the whole body is corrupt. Ala wa hiya al-qalb. And that's not necessarily the pump heart, the material heart. That is a spiritual heart. But it's in the body, in the fil jasadi. And so we have to honor the jasad. We do. And inshallah ta'ala, these exercises, and inshallah ta'ala, if you're interested in counseling, finding a somatic counselor that is aware of the need to bring in the body, to bring in the emotions and sensations, and then helping you along, inshallah ta'ala, in your health journey. We ask Allah ta'ala for tawfiq for all of us in this, inshallah ta'ala. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Connections with Sheikh Idris. We hope to see you again next time, inshallah ta'ala. Thank you.
Look forward to it. No problem. Look forward to it, Amazon.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa salam.